3 is to relabel that public comment as opposed to what it's currently labeled, and that way sort of address what I expect would be objection to referring to members of the public as the audience.
I'll second that.
And do not misspell it.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't gonna mention that, but yes, that's
Right, sorry.
He's getting beat up here, Bob.
I expect.
The only other thing I was gonna say is, and I mentioned this to Bob, is that I'm, in thinking about the Township Supervisor's report, I have a number of planning items to share. It may go longer than 15 minutes if people have questions or there's discussion. So I just thought I would alert you. I'll try and be as succinct as possible.
Okay, good. So we're back to just approving the agendas written. And again, in the future, if there's, don't call me today, half an hour before the meeting, like everybody does, but try to, we got a lot of time between meetings, so just let me know and we'll put it on there. So we got Gus made a motion to approve the agenda as written. We got a second.
As correct.
As corrected by Will.
Right.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. So we'll correct that. We'll add that. Corrections. Guests. No guests. Right, public comment. I guess you're kind of both guest and speaker. So why don't you our
There may be
public,
people remotely.
and again, you're not public either, so but Jan's here to speak to us a little bit.
Well, do you want to do public comment first and then have her presentation?
It's not really a presentation. I'm just gonna talk about a few things. So either way.
Chris, is there anybody up there?
No, everyone who's still waiting.
There's no waiting? All right.
Oh, okay. Well then,
Good, thank you.
People have a raised hand.
Yeah, they want to speak. Want to do them first? Let's do them first, Craig.
No problem.
Rob, okay, so
Rob, go ahead. Yes.
Kathleen Brandt.
Hi, Kathleen.
Hello, this is Kathleen Brandt, Scio resident. I'm going to say exactly what Rob Pattinson just said. This has been a long-term problem for this authority. I would ask that you get the materials in the packet because we can't see what's going on with hard copies. Thank you.
Anybody else? That's it. All right. Next we have Jan from the planning committee. Maybe you want to just introduce yourself a little bit so people know who you are.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jan Culbertson. I'm chair of the Scio Township Planning Commission. And I'm just here to update you with a couple of things that we're doing and hopefully perhaps engage some of your thoughts at some point. We have been working for a couple of years now on the Environmental Sustainability Climate Action Plan. And that is in response to the resolution that was passed by the Board of Trustees, which gives us a carbon neutrality goal for township operations by 2030 and countywide by 2035. And it is, you can find the plan, the current draft of the plan, if you go to the Environmental Sustainability Task Force page. There's a plan that you can download and look at. And the specifics of the plan are under, these are the certain focus categories: energy, water, materials and waste, agriculture and local food systems, natural ecosystems, which are, sort of the trees and the stormwater, that type of thing, transportation and mobility, and then resilience and emergency preparedness. And there are a set of sort of actions that we're proposing, and a lot of those early on are reviews of ordinances and so forth. We're developing a set of resources that will also be directed both at business, for businesses, but also for residents. And then we're going to piggyback kind of a kickoff event with the fire station open house at the end of October, and have some resources and some kind of family-friendly activities around the environmental sustainability plan. Then the other thing is, this is the July 2006 Jackson Road overlay, and we are in the process of updating the zoning and looking at Jackson Road. Obviously, that affects you guys. And so the Planning Commission is starting the discussion. What we did with the master plan is we actually allowed multifamily as a single use in the corridor. And we're continuing to discuss that and talk about density, increasing height, promoting more multimodal, including pedestrian crossings on Jackson Road, and also trying to link Jackson Road with the river. And obviously 94 is the barrier there. So those are some of the key things, and either Will or I'm gonna start attending these meetings as sort of be here. And so as we go through it, I'll try and tag some of those things that we're discussing and that we're hoping for your feedback. So thank you very much and look forward to working with you.
Question. What's the planning commission's and the trustees' plan for replacing the REUs that will be required when you switch from commercial to residential in the corridor?
Yeah, we have, from the engineers, we have about enough REUs for 3 to 4 of the Woodview Commons size multifamily. And then at that point, we will be out of REUs. There is, I know John Reiser, who's the trustee rep on the planning commission, has talked about, raising the issue. Is that something that we're going to negotiate with the city of Ann Arbor for more, or are we going to just, target certain areas along Jackson Road corridor for increasing the multifamily? But right now, it's all based, and the master plan is based on having sewer capacity.
So some of the property owners that have been promised sewer and water won't be shut out of getting their sewer and water, even though they've been taxed as properties?
The allocation has to stay. Yeah, the allocation has to be part of that. What they've already allocated per address. Yeah.
So
you can't really change that.
How you would do a 350 unit residential project with the REUs that have been promised for a PUD, like a commercial PUD. Okay,
I can tell you what my understanding is. And what the engineers did with their last, I think it was, 3 years ago or something, they actually do what's actually being used, and they have then what's been promised and how much it is available, and kind of put that all together and tell us what we've got. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I sat through part of that meeting, maybe I could, one of the things they figured out is, especially as some, people upgrade their houses with the newer fixtures and everything, the REU seems to stretch a little further because things are more water and energy efficient. So that's one thing. The other things seem to be, at least from my understanding of their presentation as well, as they sort of already had taken the numbers out. So they had gotten us down to what everyone was promised and allocated, down to what actually remains that's not appropriated to any specific parcel owner. But I mean, we could ask OHM to verify that's correct.
So they may allow a residence to use a half of a residential equivalency unit instead of a full
no, I think what's allocated, but they also look at 2 things. One, the table A that they use for calculating the REUs, and then they're also looking at the actual use. And like Ron said, they're finding that the actual use is less than the allocated
REUs. 2,000 gallons, and now with fixtures being more efficient, making 1,700 gallons instead.
Yeah.
Well, the bonus is they'll still charge for an RU, which will be.
Then we can make it stretch further, right?
Yeah.
Will they?
Of course it will be.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we have the trustees, they haven't approved yet the additional uses and density for the quality 16 yet, have they?
No, the public hearing is tomorrow night, and I don't think we're gonna take action tomorrow.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you. I'll just listen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other speakers or guests? I don't see any. So there's no special report. My report, I'll just go through, I guess, just real quick, what I've been doing
the minutes.
between, oh,
Yeah, to approve the minutes.
approved minutes, yes, thank you. Right now.
Motion to approve.
Everybody take a look at the minutes.
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve, get a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved, thank you. Sorry about that. All right, just a real report, just to tell you what I've been working on between the meetings. Still dealing with signs out front. You know, we get a lot of those poster board signs. Question is how to enforce it. We've got like, most people are very conscious of it. Once you tell them like you can't put it out there, like fine. I mean, 99%, there's two people that consistently do it and you probably know where they are. So how do you address that? You know, we got some new ordinance people, I guess, that are helping Doug run the ordinance in the area. So that's an issue and I'll keep working on that. Cambridge sidewalk issue, talked to them, super nice. They're gonna try to fix that themselves. Landscape committee, we talked about the Scott Hedberg letter. We're gonna address some of those issues in there. You know, like Scio hired Anna Cohen, I believe, as Parks Preservation's and Pathways Director, which I didn't know we had a person like that. We have a full-time person, so we can talk to them. Chris at KBK has been excellent on it too. So Scott brought up some excellent ideas, so we'll follow up with that. I don't know if we'd hire him. It almost sounded like a job application, but I don't know if we'd hire him to help us, but we'll definitely use some of his suggestions. Just talked to Mr. Fink in the hallway, still finishing the contract with AATA about the bus shelters and get those transferred and ownership back over to them. Liquor licenses, the DDA, you know, there's been some questions about liquor licenses. Will said that the Scio Township will handle that. Sandy put together a PDF, a questionnaire, I believe. Will, that she?
I know I need to share with Will. I
Yeah.
also.
Sandy Musser.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes, so she can forward that to you.
Good.
It doesn't sound, I don't know why the DDA doesn't have an input on the DDA liquor license, but it sounds like we don't, so we'll forward that
But
on.
a quick clarification, it's a category of license. And we assumed when it first came up, like a year ago, that it needed to go through the DDA, but it's a label that's placed on a particular category of license by the State Liquor Control Commission. It has to be approved by the Board of Trustees, so we could put it through the DDA, but there's not really a reason to do so as long as it fits the criteria for a DDA license.
So the DDA has, the township has the license just like downtown in Arbor that has like, I don't know, 700 of them on the DDA district. Is that what we do here? We have a bunch here as well?
I don't know what the limit is on the number of DDA licenses that a municipality can issue, but as long as a business that's located within the DDA is applying for that category of license, then we at the township can approve their application to the Liquor Control Commission under that category, even though we've used up our quota licenses.
So
in fact, we have to have used up our quota licenses before people can apply for a DDA
So
license.
those are the ones that you cannot transfer, they stay there with the business, correct?
Yeah, there's a whole
Special-
bunch of different
Yeah, I
rules that
understand.
apply to DDA
Okay.
licenses.
Yeah, I get that. So
We're out of quota licenses now, correct?
We have now approved the last of the quota licenses. I believe that is making its way through the Liquor Control Commission. I'm not sure what its status is at this point.
So again, because we had
Yeah.
3 people here working on it, plus them, it's kind of redundant, so let's just,
Let them have it.
exactly. Okay. That's about it. Environmental task force, I guess they did a study and I'll get the results of the study and forward it on. I don't know if it was just in the DDA area, but we'll get that study and take a look at it as well. Okay, that's all I'm working on.
Okay, I will be quick as I can. I just realized there is a number of different developments that have come through or are in the process of coming through that may have an impact on the Downtown Development Authority District. So I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of them. That if for some of you this will be redundant, you probably know the Heritage Woods project did receive final approval for its PUD plan, and that's a big project that's located immediately adjacent to the far west end of the DDA district on the west side of Baker Road. So right across the street from the part of the DDA that sort of stretches up Baker north of the highway. There's now a project that is moving forward to develop a mixed housing for seniors, including care facility. It's the first, this is probably noteworthy, it's the first project in Scio Township approved with a community wastewater treatment plant, which presented a lot of issues for the board to consider. You may also be aware Trailwoods subdivision, which sort of straddles the DDA district, has hit a snag in terms of its road improvements. So those were to commence with a paving of the unpaved portion of Stabler down to Park Road, and then Park Road east towards, but not all the way to Zeeb Road. That's on hold, and the reason for that is because included in that was a shift of the intersection, the reconfiguration of the intersection of Stabler and Park. And when the residents of the Trailwood subdivision became aware of this, there were lots of concerns that were raised by a number of the residents, and so that's being looked at. It sort of drew the attention of the township to the fact that even though the road commission and Eagle and the developer had reached an agreement about this, it had not come back to the township, and therefore the implications for the site plan had not been taken into consideration. So there's a step that we're now sort of, that should have occurred that we're now sort of pausing so that we can take that step. And sort of related to that, I don't know if you're aware, but the Menards has a number of outlots. One of them is immediately north of the Trailwood subdivision. They proposed self-storage facility that got turned down. So they are now looking at other potential uses of that outlot. And so I expect that and some of the other outlots in the Menards, the larger Menards site will be coming forward, and that will have implications for the Downtown Development Authority. The Suburban Lithia project, some of you may remember, this came to this group as a question related to the far western portion of that site on Jackson. This is the former American Brooch site, and then up on the hill, there were a number of houses that are now no longer there. This site has been consolidated. It's to be 3 auto dealerships. I think a Land Rover, Jaguar, combination, Mercedes, and what was the other one? BMW. And so that project is moving forward. There will be a public hearing for the final site plan. And one of the questions that's still hanging out there is what the package of community benefits will be that particular development will offer because it's a PUD. Goodrich Theater is coming up for a public hearing at the Board of Trustees tomorrow night. And in this case, they're seeking the current owner of that, I think.
Etkin.
Yeah, Etkin is seeking a major amendment to the PUD in terms of the potential uses for the site. It was approved as a theater, and they have tried to market it and failed to find another tenant to take it over as a theater. So they're now seeking sort of a list of categories of uses that they can use to sort of remarket that site. And then once we reach an agreement on what potential uses they can have, they would have to come back once they do find a buyer or to go through the site plan process. So this is just a step to allow them to remarket the site as something other than a theater. And we do have input from some of the existing outlot tenants on the Goodrich Theater site as to what uses they would prefer. This group, at some point, maybe a year or two ago, we had a lot of discussions about the Zeeb, the North Zeeb corridor. And one, you may remember that there was state funding that came for potential pedestrian improvements of the Zeeb Road overpass. And OHM, the engineering consultant for the township, completed a structural study of what kinds of changes the current bridge could support. Reviewed that with MDOT and basically got a no from MDOT as to making any improvements that would require any kind of physical changes to the overpass. So this is sort of sending us back to the drawing board in terms of what we can do to make the overpass friendlier, more welcoming, safer for pedestrians without making any major physical changes to it. For example, putting in a barrier between the traffic and the automobile traffic and the sidewalk. That's not allowed. So that's where we're at with that. It may.
That's what MDOT said they would do with that meeting.
Yeah, well, some folks at MDOT were more open to it than others, but basically the ones that had the authority said no. So the soonest that physical changes will be able to occur is when that bridge is physically updated significantly enough to, incorporate those kinds of physical changes into the new bridge. And that's, who knows, yeah, that could be 10, 20 years from now, So what we have is what.
That whole conversation was to try to get pedestrians from Meyer up safely.
Yeah.
And then we talked about it forever. And then you got the non-essential grant from the state of Michigan, which is great. That's what they called it for that end down there. And kind of that, the safety issue for pedestrians down there just kind of died. But we still, again, people are walking up and down there. We just want to make it as safe as possible.
And that's what we're, pardon?
MDOT.
MDOT. To make any kind of change to a overpass over a highway, you have to have MDOT on board, and they are not.
Whatever happened to the idea that one of the problems, as I recall, was when I was on that committee, was that crossing, because with the exit ramps and so on was so large that it was going to be expensive, more and more expensive. The idea of maybe swinging to the west with the pathway or whatever, the crossing, and doing just a separate bridge for highway crossing, which would be shorter as far as being elevated, et cetera.
A dedicated, that is one possible solution that would be independent of the existing bridge. It's much more expensive. I think the back of the envelope figure that was tossed out a couple of years ago was $2 million to build a pedestrian crossing, which to me seems like in current situation probably way low because these
closer to 4.
These bridges over the river for border to border trail, each one of them is $1 million. So I can't imagine that crossing I-94 would come in at just twice what it costs to cross, a portion of the Huron River. So
It's not by water.
Yeah.
No, caissons, one pilings, yeah, okay.
I don't know. But in any case, that's where we're at in terms of that particular hoped for improvement. The silver lining is that the grant from the state is fungible within the scope of the project, and the scope of that particular grant included zebra pathway all the way across the river. So the funds that would have been expended on physical improvements to the overpass could be used elsewhere as long as they fit within that, the terms of the grant. The only other thing I wanted to mention, and this is a topic that I raised with Planning Commission, and I thought it was fair to raise with the DDA as well, is that there are some certain parcels of vacant land owned by the township, most of them within the Downtown Development Authority district. And the Planning Commission was considering potential uses that could achieve some of the goals that they've been talking about. And I wanted to make sure that the DDA is aware of those conversations going on, and some of the parcels. The largest of these, some of you may know, is the one that was acquired by the township when the township years ago was thinking of having its own wastewater treatment plant. And that is at the north end of Stabler, just immediately adjacent to I-94. And so that's one parcel. I think it's about 20 plus acres.
What's the proposed use for that?
Well, there's no proposed use. I'm just saying that there's these vacant parcels. The Planning Commission was having kind of a brainstorming session about how to encourage particular kinds of development. And obviously one resource that the township has is these vacant parcels that could be included in negotiations with a developer if you were trying to steer a development in a particular direction that was in the township's interests. For example, the Planning Commission has talked about density, residential density in the Jackson corridor. If the township were able to say, well, we have, we see that you're working on a project here, we happen to have an adjacent parcel, let's talk, so that's one way that the township could use some of these otherwise sort of fallow pieces of land. Most of the pieces of land are smaller than the 20-acre parcel at the north end of Stabler. They're scraps, basically, is the way I think of them, that were left over from the boulevard improvements. So you've got these little pieces of land. There's one at the corner of Stabler and Jackson. There's another sort of group of little parcels on the south side of Jackson, near where Cosmetology used to be.
Yeah, the outline from.
So there's kind of this like wooded area that sort of overgrows the sidewalk. And when we were looking a couple of years ago to find out who was responsible for that, we found out it was us. So.
Is that the one where they buried the Waterman Jim?
I don't know.
It's good to know.
You want to just put a for sale sign?
Only 6 feet down.
That's one option, but if the township wanted to use this resource in a more kind of
Steering.
yes, as a means of sort of steering particular kinds of development, it's something that I raised with the Planning Commission because of the conversation they were having. I think it's something that obviously is of interest to this group too. So I tried to be as quick as I could.
Thanks, Will.
I know
Those three parcels are pretty much the three parcels that might be.
Well, there's a few others that seem to belong to nobody. So there's one that's at the corner of Parkland Plaza and Jackson, where the university sort of staked a claim by placing a sign there, but it doesn't belong to them. And
I did some research on that, that it was, the road commission seemed to take possession of it, but I still think it might have been a fall off from the old Mercywood Hospital, so it might belong to St. Joe's Hospital. And I had a call from the University of Michigan facilities people asking who should mow it. And I said, well, you, since you took possession of it and decided who would be on the sign, et cetera, et cetera.
That's the position we taken too.
That's what Linda used to do, is make sure that was mowed. And then, U of M came in and took it over.
Their sign.
Yeah.
I think
So-
I think I've seen a deed to the Washtenaw County Road Commission for that piece. It's a triangle.
Well, usually what the road commission response is under those circumstances is, oh no, that doesn't belong to us, that belongs to Scio. So even if it still says the road commission owns it, in their view, it belongs to Scio.
So, yeah, okay. So so has U of M started mowing it? Have you noticed?
It has been mown one
It's
time.
been it was just 2 or 3 weeks ago I got the call, so.
I don't know if they're going to maintain the mowing of it or not, but
Our utilities director, Steve Wagowski, was in communication with the U of M medical folks about mowing it, because since they put their sign there, it's sort of in their interest.
Absolutely.
All right, any questions for Will? No, good, but
moving backwards to two pieces. So you were talking about the scraps that are left over. How do we get a list of what the scraps are?
I can,
Trying to figure out what the zoning is, what the,
right,
if there's any use to us as the boulevard.
I looked at these pieces with our assessor, Andrea Garrett, and confirmed the three sort of ones that I identified. Then there's these other ones that belong to nobody.
Andrea would.
And Andrea's probably the best source, but I can forward on to this group the email that I sent, I think as a follow-up to the planning commission.
We're getting a map, I believe, tonight,
Oh, okay.
so we can forward that.
And then in your report, you mentioned the auto dealerships are coming forward with their final site plan, and there hasn't been defined community benefits for the American Roach site. I haven't read the Doug Gallan's recommendations, and if he's put anything in there.
They offered categories, and the developer, and we just had a meeting just before this one where we were talking about next steps in terms of communicating with them to clarify what those benefits will be.
I'm just thinking about road signage along the boulevard, or, if there's something bigger scope that we can look at as a township, to ask them for community benefit instead of more trees, which they don't have room for on that side anyway. If we could, as the DDA, put anything forward towards that discussion.
I don't think we've had anything from the DDA other than the discussion a couple of years ago where this group, somewhat different membership, said no thank you to the suggestion that the developer was making at the time for giving the little 2-acre parcel on the edge of the west edge of their site to the township for a park.
on the highway.
Yeah, so
Yes.
the DDA at that point was very clear that this group did not see that as a community benefit. And in fact, I think Jay was quite outspoken, as I recall, about taking it off the tax rolls. And so that message got communicated, but no, I don't think there was any other message from this group about what it recommended in terms of community benefits.
So I can tell you the reason on that is that basically you have a small parcel that's topographically challenged, I think. And it's adjacent to ICT power lines, Jackson Road and I-90.
I didn't mean that parcel, I meant that American Broach is coming forward with a PUD request, and they are mandated to give us a Scio Township community benefit, and they don't have a clear idea of what their community benefit could be.
Are they still on charging stations?
Can we give them options?
Well, they have a whole list of community benefits that they put
It's a good
forward,
one.
yeah.
When I was
Yeah.
Yeah, it includes 12 high-speed, this is the category 3 charging stations. That they're
It's like
doing
a charging
solar.
park, as I recall.
Yeah, it's a whole park, charging
Great,
park,
okay, good.
as well as some other things.
Great.
Yeah, there's a list. Yep.
It's great, yeah, come charge your car and shop for a new one.
I personally, I tend to see that as an extension of their business as
Yeah.
opposed to a big community benefit.
Smart business.
But,
Yeah.
but
Well-
I think they are going beyond what they might have done as just an extension of their business. And I think maybe that's where there's a margin of community benefit, but the township, they're also talking about a contribution of some kind towards the fire department costs, towards the training, particularly because of the charging stations and the battery storage and so on. And other categories of community benefit that would be sort of more off-site.
Just real quick, how is there like, I don't know, say they come to us and their project's $15 million. Is there some sort of magic formula we come up with at the township level of, okay, 300,000 isn't enough, $500,000 is, there's some sort of like, there's some sort of formula, I guess?
Well, we were just talking about that in the prior meeting, what we've been working towards, to the degree that we have a formula, was based on residential density. And Suburban Lithia, as an auto dealership, PUD, doesn't really align with that measure. And so it presents a kind of an exception to the rule. Most PUDs that we've been dealing with in recent years have been sort of larger, denser residential developments. But this is a different animal.
And I think probably 15 years ago in the master plan, that was what came through, was that they would take an underlying zoning and do this, use the underlying zoning to do a PUD, and that's been changed, right? More or less.
It's still, you can do the underlying zoning or you can do, the land use.
They were trying to get mixed use is what they were going for, as I recall.
It's sort of obvious that a dense residential development is going to use more REUs than an auto dealership. It has a relatively low impact in terms of water and sewage use.
Any other questions for Will? Good. Good information. All right, I don't know if Chris can pull up the landscaping PDF, so I'm gonna jump to, and I should have put this on the front, but the Dino Drive and other road projects that's on old business, I'm gonna jump that back to discussion items on top. Because Linda wanted to address road issues. We got some calls from some other people, so maybe you can give us an update on where the road committee is, if there's any progress on the revolving fund, the Dino Drive project.
The concept from, I'm a member of the Scio Township Local Roads Advisory Committee, which seems to be running on a parallel but completely separate and uninformed track to the DDA as far as how we can get the roads in the township that are not residential roads improved in any way, shape, or form using the revolving fund. It was brought to our attention this last meeting by our chair, Jillian Carey, that there is a document for the revolving fund when it was originally created that states that the DDA and the Board of Trustees must jointly approve expenditures out of the revolving fund, but ultimately it is the Board of Trustees that votes as to how the money is spent. And since no mechanism was ever put in place for how that agreement between the DDA and the Board of Trustees was going to happen, money was put into that fund and it has just sat there unused for many years. The Road Advisory Committee feels that it would be better to spend that money on Scio Township roads, but feels that it should be on local roads, not on commercial roads. And they aren't really up under the original inception of that revolving fund decree, a vote in there, but would like, Road Advisory Committee would like to have the opportunity to work with the DDA in the future towards getting funds utilized that are in the fund. And then if the revolving fund is going to continue, to figure out a better equation for how to make it useful instead of just being a sinking fund that sits. Dino Drive, the DDA allocated money towards that and then had a discussion about whether revolving funds could be used for that. I unfortunately was not at the May meeting and I missed a lot of groundwork on that. So I can't speak intelligently to what was said, but working back to my first comment, I think we need to have some sort of recommendation, maybe from the DDA to the board that says we would suggest the way to dialogue this is that we send the board a recommendation and then the board votes on it or doesn't vote on it, or, you know, create some kind of a mechanism for the DDA to approve in tandem with the Board of Trustees without having to have separate meetings to do it. That being one big piece of it. Scio Local Roads Advisory Committee has also been tasked with trying to find a new mechanism for funding for Scio Local Road Improvement because the SAD has expired and moving forward we have nothing planned at this point in time. We are trying to grapple with what the best way to do that is. The Special Assessment District mechanism that was used for the last 10 years, I would say it is not the leading plan for how to move forward. It looks like it's a very difficult way legally to try and obtain funds from the township residents to improve the local roads. But we recognize as one committee that we probably should be working with the DDA so that we're all pulling together when we go to the road commission each year for the roads that we want improved in the township, so that it looks like a united front instead of two completely separate, you know, the local roads wants this, DDA wants that. So how in November and December, perhaps, do we come together with a list of recommendations? Is it just a matter of getting something from local roads, putting it on the DDA agenda and having DDA review what we have in mind for local roads, what DDA has in mind for the commercial roads, with the intention that for the 2024 Washtenaw County Road Commission road agreement with Scio Township, we as Scio Township boards are making the recommendations for what roads are going to be improved as opposed to just leaving it solely to Washtenaw County Road Commission. But that there's sort of multiple pieces here. The mechanism that seems to be the least legally challenged, but the most fraught with concern is putting up a ballot initiative for an additional millage for local road funding. The fire department is putting up a large request for the November ballot, and we were talking about trying to put something on summer 2024 ballot for local roads improvement, or the township board of trustees also under the documents that are in place has the right to just state a rate that will be charged to the citizens not to exceed, sorry, well, I can't remember what the board of trustees can say, we the township will be charging you, the citizens, up to.
Well, I can't remember what the ceiling is under statute.
There's a ceiling on the statute.
Yeah.
And just requesting that the board obtain funds each year that way instead, but it would be something that would have to be agreed upon prior to discussions for the Scio Township budget, which is done every year in April, so that what funds we have to spend. SADs in the township we don't have any local road SADs that are being performed this year. Things have ground to a complete halt because of the legality of special assessment districts and trying to navigate through how to make a special assessment district work when you've got some citizens that just don't want to participate.
Well, then,
We need 51%, right?
we mean the local neighborhood ones or the township wide?
The local neighborhood ones that I don't think we have anything that's actually going to.
Well, they tried to organize one for Park
Ridge.
Park Ridge. I get all my park streets mixed up, but yeah, Park Ridge. But I think the sort of public meeting that was held with all the neighbors became clear that they didn't have the kind of support in the neighborhood for that at this time. That might have gone forward if there had been more support within the neighborhood.
That's outside the DDA, right?
That is outside
Well
the
outside,
DDA.
yeah.
But the last piece that
That's my
comes into
point.
this is that the township with the township administrator / manager position being fluid this last couple of years does not have anyone within the township who really oversees special assessment funds, special assessment district funds. And if someone comes forward as a neighborhood or as Dino Drive business employers and say, we want to create a special assessment district, we know how that has to happen, the meetings that have to happen and the different steps that must be taken legally, but the township itself doesn't have a person that helps the mechanism happen.
What is a road commission? What does your committee do?
We're an advisory committee to the Board of Trustees. We have
You
absolutely.
can't put together special districts.
No, we have absolutely no.
Well, in the past, the chair of that committee and other committee members played a more hands-on role. And I think when in 2021, we sort of reconstituted that committee, this was one of the questions is how will that role be handled? You know, how will the committee handle its responsibility in terms of receiving information requests for road improvements and advising people? And I know you guys were wrestling with coming up with sort of a list of, you know, step by step, here's what you do in order to get your neighborhood SAD approved.
We have, but it's not, being the administrators of a special assessment district, either for business owners or local roads, is not actually in our charge. So unless the board changes the charge to the committee, we can't.
Questions?
Tell me if I'm wrong, but the Board of Trustees can establish a special assessment district, and unless it's challenged appropriately, it would become a special assessment district. The project would go through and be placed on the tax rolls for those in the special assessment district. Am I wrong?
You are correct. The board has the ability to do that.
The board has the ability to do that, and I can see why they are hesitant to do that because it's, why do you want to do the fight, you know, is kind of what it's about. But as I recall, and Sandy, you can tell me if I'm wrong, the revolving fund was established to loan to an SAD, special assessment district, that was too small to acquire bonding at a reasonable rate because of all the legal fees and things involved. So there are neighborhoods around that are 10 and 20 homes and so on. And it was for the improvement, to cover the improvement costs. And that funding was to be repaid to the revolving fund with interest, just like a bond, to revolve for another SAD use. And that's what it was established for. And you and I were there, right?
Yes, sir.
Is that the way you?
That is absolutely correct, and it has been used for that purpose.
It's been repaid and it's available for that use, and how it's administered is up to, I guess we have to roll back to the supervisor and the trustees, because we are not allowed to do that, as far as I know.
I was there with you, we did that too. And it came from the DDA, the original money. and then it was repaid, and then the township collected it. The question is, who's gonna use the revolving fund? It's a hundred, how much is it, 150 grand?
Something like
It's
this.
more like,
So,
that was closer to
I
200.
just,
Sandy, do you know?
it's right around
I
that.
looked a little earlier, I think it's right around 150.
I think some of it was used in 2021
Yes.
for enterprise, for the improvements to Enterprise Drive.
And we shouldn't have done that.
Well,
Why?
Well, it should have been repaid by Enterprise Drive.
it wasn't functioning as a revolving fund expenditure is what you're saying.
Hence the word revolving fund,
Right,
doesn't say the money revolved back in.
Yeah.
Enterprise Drive got away with one and got their whole road paid for.
Well, it wasn't all paid out of it was only a portion of it was paid out.
I know, but they didn't contribute at all. The owners there didn't contribute,
Yep.
That's the point. So the question is it gonna be a revolving fund again, or are we just gonna, do we just wanna spend it on Dino Drive?
It can be,
But-
it's been a few weeks now since I looked at this, but there are a couple of options. It could be used as a revolving fund as it was originally established, or the money could be moved from that into the general fund and then spent however the township chose, I believe. And of course, I would think that the only expenditure that would meet with my approval, I'm only one of 7 votes, would be on road improvements, of the kind that the fund was established for in the first place. But that, if the fund were to be sort of phased out, that would be the way to phase it out.
I'd probably resist that as a money grab, and can see that maybe that's just not what it was intended for.
But what a message that came from the Roads Advisory Committee early this year led me to propose using that money that remains in the revolving fund as half of or around half of the cost of improving Dino Drive, because the fund was first established within the DDA district using DDA funds. The recommendation that came from the Roads Advisory Committee said basically, well, you could either do this, or you could just spend it on a DDA project. And at that time, this group was thinking, well, how are we gonna figure out how to pay for Dino Drive? And it seemed like a logical fit. And then we bumped up against some objection to using the revolving fund that way, and so it didn't go
We
forward.
voted to use it that way.
This group did, but then the township as a whole bumped up against a question about the revolving fund, and so that particular project didn't go forward this year.
So we've offered to pay for part of Dino Drive, provided the owner, DDA has provided the owners will pay for the rest. And they've chosen to turn it back to gravel. I mean, that's what they've chosen. They've just said, we aren't gonna do it. And to me, if the trustees pass an SAD there, they would have to move forward with resisting the SAD.
Well, actually, the vote that happened most recently in this group was to spend, I think, 118,000 and the match would come from somewhere else. It wasn't specified that it had to come from the property owners. And the match that presented itself at that point was this money that's just sitting there in the revolving fund. But that didn't happen. I suppose it could still happen technically, but it didn't.
Maybe we want to recommend that we use that funding for Medi Drive. Okay. Because we've already said we'll spend money for Dino Drive, but they don't want it.
Well, some of them do.
Well, yeah, like 5 of them do. I mean, I don't know why we can't set up a special assessment district for Dino Drive and then make them pay for it, right?
The Board of Trustees could do that, or the people who own businesses, own property on Dino Drive could do it. But just to clarify, Medi and Dino were both projects that were sort of under consideration. The Road Commission recommended, when this was raised earlier this year, the Road Commission recommended Dino Drive. It sort of makes sense if you think about it. The Medi Drive, there's a lot of vacant land. It may be developed, and then you could turn to whoever is developing it that's what the road commission is really good at doing, and imposing, sort of requirements on them to pay for the road improvements as a part of their development agreement.
I didn't know you could legally do that. I thought it had to go through an SAD.
So the road commission has,
You have to replace the road?
the road commission has superpowers that go beyond what we mere mortals can imagine.
We meant to ask Linda. And that's.
I can add it to the packet for the next meeting if you want to. So Jillian Carey pulled out the 2008 board action for the fund to be created. And there's an introductory summarization sheet prior to the actual resolution, and then there's the resolution. And in the introductory summarization sheet, it says the DDA, the idea to establish the SAD to repair roads in the DDA district is what the revolving fund was planned for. The DDA would pay half the cost of the road project. The other half would be paid by the SAD, with those payments going into the township revolving fund to establish the seed money for local roads SAD program. Here is the crux of the problem. So, yes, the money came from the DDA, but in this summarization of intent, it says that the revolving fund is to be seed money for local road SAD, not commercial business road.
But local roads could be commercial roads.
It is, yeah.
That, I would say that those trains don't meet in our committee.
They do because.
We have-
This
we have-
committee's about commercial.
We have connector
That's
roads,
right.
which are, yes, which are
Oh,
very
the
important.
local
to be
roads
local.
and connector roads, either of them could be viewed as commercial or residential. I think maybe there's a misunderstanding of the
Maybe
meaning of
that's a
local
local
road.
And that is not actually part of the resolution, and the resolution itself is clear as mud. So,
I don't think it's clear as mud. There's 2, 3 committees looking at it with different opinions. For you to say that is not, no, I agree, it's written.
it does not clarify exactly
DDA
how.
set that up with DDA money, and from my perspective, that money needs to stay in the DDA where it's not being used properly.
Well,
So there's a difference of opinion there. It's not clear as mud, is what I'm saying.
Respectfully.
And I agree that our 2 committees, we can, maybe meet this fall and then work out some planning for.
Specific to trying to go to the road commission with a unified plan for what we want 2024 road improvements to look
But
like.
again, we're not worried about the residential areas.
I
If
understand
you
that.
bring those up and they're not in the DDA area.
Well, there are some residential areas.
Well, obviously, her example was not in the DDA.
The fund, the revolving fund was set up so it could be loaned to a residential area. But it wasn't good, and they paid it back because those were some of the smaller subdivisions. And I remember it specifically because I was on the local roads committee at the time. And to say that you were just gonna give it grab it and change the intent of the revolving fund.
I bring to you what was charged to me
Okay.
to bring forth from the local roads advisory.
You look at the state of Michigan, we're all dealing with these roads, so it's nothing, we're all doing this, so. It's not just us, it's everywhere. I mean, I'm gonna talk to Jan about planning committee and, I hear a lot of things, that are nice for the community, but I don't see her talking about roads very much. And I think that's something 100% of us use, so.
So we're on roads, don't you know?
Well, I think this is a good plan, Linda, to bring the actual original 2008 language to this committee and to work together with the DDA and the Roads Advisory Committee to come up with sort of a shared understanding, whatever it might be, for working together and coordinating. I think to the degree that there are agreements between the DDA and the Road Commission to do projects within the DDA district, there is a reason to keep them separate from the larger township agreement. But it should, I think the Road Advisory Committee is correct that it's better to come forward with a kind of a unified plan I think the timing, if I remember correctly, it worked pretty well in the sense of the recommendation from the township of these are the roads we want improved. Having that in January.
Yeah, by January.
Yeah, and it may be that there's even more reason for the DDA to be involved, given that the funding, the township's funding for road improvements is a little bit up in the air. Going into next construction season, it may be a good time for the DDA to sort of take the lead on focusing on projects within the DDA, because there is this match. I mean, that's one of the things that the township really, has to keep an eye on, is the road commission each year puts forward a certain amount of money that's a match for us as a township to put forward, and we don't want to leave that on the table. And it may be that maybe 2024 is a good year for a focus of the agreement to be on roads that need improvement within the DDA district.
How much is that match?
It varies, it varies from year to year. I think this year it was about $100,000.
It was 100,000 just for Scio Township, all our roads, that's all they had, which is,
So how much is that?
In a roundabout, it's $1 million.
Pledged, but the trustees pledged to other projects already.
Oh, it's usually Scio Township puts in way more than the match. And it just gets dispersed within the agreement. So I'm not sure. I think if we approve tomorrow, an expansion of the gravel lift on Park Road for another $30,000, I think our total with the road commission this year will be about $500,000. The township's portion of the cost.
That's from the special assessment.
Portion of it is from the special assessment funds. A portion of it is not, because those projects were outside the scope of the original 2013 SAD.
Will, do you know if the township signed the third road agreement that came through from the Washtenaw County Road Commission? Or Bob, did you sign it for Dino Drive? It was specific to
I did sign it.
$248,679 specific to Dino Drive, Jackson to the end of the road.
Yeah, but that agreement couldn't go forward because the board of trustees did not approve the expenditure from the revolving
It
fund.
was not signed by the township.
So,
I
yeah, so
believe that
it's-
was the case. I just wanted to confirm.
Right, no, that agreement, that portion of the overall package of agreements did not go forward. The agreements that did go forward, well, you probably know.
This was a standalone
No.
one, so if this one didn't go through, that did not.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the roads? But again, I think we should, this committee and the road committee talk in the fall and try to put together a game plan.
And then we'll have like a plan and a process, so we don't have to always have these
Exactly.
half-hour conversations every 2 months. Right, so we have like a decision-making.
I would like that.
Okay, I fully agree.
And also if there is a way that we, during that just time, could discuss how the revolving fund can be spent.
Yeah.
So maybe if we come together unified on that, then the board perhaps would.
But you're right, Jennifer, we've had 2 years now of
Yes.
kind of disconnect between this group about what it wants to do and the township as a whole.
Right. We'll get there.
Yeah. Someday.
Fall
Someday,
23.
Dino Drive will be
Fall
repaved.
23.
All right, good. Next, we got the landscape project. And I think Chris is gonna put it on the screen. The options, everybody should have got an email on it. I think it was uploaded to the DDA website. But I guess there's 3 options to choose from. Just took off, right?
Well,
Yours.
I don't know if it's 3 options. It's potentially 3 different boulevard deliverables, different trees, different perennials or bushes. And I know Linda mentioned that she also had some insight into stuff that is, I think, easier to maintain and longer lasting.
Well, I like KBK a lot, but I see Wigelia and we get back into the same problem we had with the primrose.
Yeah,
If you don't trim the bushes.
right. And he made it, so we met with Chris in person maybe 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago and had the same conversation. We don't want garbage in there. We don't obviously want low maintenance and we want it to be improved drought resistance. And not knowing these, things. I also have issues with lilies just because after July 15th, they look brown. But
We do, but nor do we want dead shrubs that just.
correct, yes. So did you all have a look at it? Any strong opinions? I think maybe we just need to, we could probably have one,
Look at it, 1, 3, and 4 as possibilities.
yeah.
So two of the options include, I don't even know if I want to try this, Musashino columnar zelkova trees, and one of them is a sun coal locust. Right?
Something like that, yes.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about landscaping in these different things, but I like the goals.
Yes.
I just wondered, are these native trees and plants, or are we introducing something into the mix here that wouldn't ordinarily grow in Michigan?
I mean, I hope he's a professional. I hope he wouldn't
Right.
give us trees that aren't gonna grow in Michigan.
Well, it's not necessarily that they won't grow in Michigan, but one of the things that Scio Township has plenty of is things that are invasive species like honeysuckle and I'm drawing a blank now, autumn olive. I mean, things that people thought, oh, this is great, we'll plant this along the highway and it's low maintenance, and then it just took over.
Yeah. We can definitely, I think, probably follow up on that question, but I think the answer is no, we don't, we cannot. We want something they're experienced with, or,
It grows up to 40 feet. The concept is it goes this way, it doesn't go this way. When they say columnar, they're saying, so you're not going to have to prune branches that will hit the mowers in the face as the tree gets larger. But that is
or
a
obstruct view of traffic or something.
right. That is a large tree. Jay will laugh. Little leaf linden is another one that's salt tolerant, drought tolerant. It's the same thing. None of these are native to the state of Michigan. Is
You're
it?
talking about locusts?
Yes.
I mean, they're, as long as you limb them up as they grow, they're a pretty cool tree as far as maintenance, particularly the leaf cleanup. What do you think?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
but
one that's
the
always
locust-
recommended by the planning commissions.
but they have to be maintained. And if a locust is damaged,
I see.
Here we go.
it starts growing little locust branches everywhere and these trees get.
They do,
Oh.
little suckers coming off the trunks all the time.
and I know that
Which have to be maintained.
in the intention of that type of tree was a small leaf, right,
Yes,
which I learned.
yes, the locusts are
And
the
the
little.
lindens actually are really nice, provided you limb them up as they're growing. I see them in neighborhoods all the time. And the limbs are out over the streets, hitting you in the head when you get out of your car because people didn't bother to prune them. But otherwise, they have kind of a columnar, they grow pyramidal more or less into kind of a teardrop shape at the top. We've seen them like that, so.
So the thing about the Musashino is that it doesn't need to be limbed. Just goes straight up and it has interesting bark.
The KBK letter proposal says they don't require any maintenance, which I wondered about that. Really? Zero maintenance?
Well, so that was one of the things I asked Jennifer was, this was a mistake, I think, that was made at the first time that we put the beds in. Are we giving any budget to maintenance of these beds?
Well, they maintain them now, and they'll maintain them in the future, KBQ will.
DDA
Well,
doesn't maintain them.
They mow the grass around them.
We had a different carrier before, our contractor, and these guys are doing a far superior job than we had before, so.
Yeah, no, KBK is a great company. I don't have any
I think it looks good. I think we need to get rid of the garbage collectors out there.
That's a category of shrub,
Yeah.
garbage collector.
But again, I trust the professionals to pick the trees and plants that go in there. And we asked them for low maintenance things, so I think they gave us 3 options, but if you guys wanna look again, I'd like to, we talked about $100,000 to try to get it in this fall. So I'd like to obviously do something this fall, so I was hoping, because we've been talking about this for 3-4 meetings again, doing something today and finalizing it and letting them start in September.
And they proposed a variety of like those different
There's
plans.
3 options.
3 different ones, that we were gonna do all 3, so it wasn't like.
That's what I thought.
flip
So we'll
flop.
see install 27 new beds with a mix of the 3 designs.
Yeah. But if there's concern based on experience with these, and I know we talked about having one more, just a walkthrough, just to confirm where they're gonna be, because some of the boulevards are longer, or the islands, than others. Just to confirm which ones are gonna have 2, which might have 1, just so we're all aligned when the 27 get implemented. It's not like all in 4 of them, which I know it won't be, but
Right.
we don't want
He's
to surprise.
available tomorrow morning to do that at 8.
At 8?
I've arranged that with Gus too, and
Okay.
I just found out,
Anyone that can
so
join,
I was
okay.
gonna-
Well, the questions I had were, are these native plants? Who's gonna water these new plantings? Because it's really crucial for, a healthy start for any newly planted tree or shrub. And, is there a replacement guarantee, like if they fail? So that's not built into this.
Not without irrigation, and then the gators don't last that long.
Yeah, so I guess those are sort of questions. And then there's the other thing that I think Scott Hedberg raised, and that is that when the road commission did the initial construction of the boulevard, they somehow managed to put really bad soil into the berms or whatever they are, in the median in the middle. And I think what they discovered before is that they had to do like some remediation of the soil wherever there was gonna be planting, and I don't know if that's built into this, because if you put a new bed somewhere, you're probably gonna bump up against really bad dirt that's been there for, 20, 30 years.
I was there for that too. That was the road commission wrote the contract to use MDOT spec for the topsoil in the boulevard, and particularly in phase, I guess you call it phase 3. And then a lot of that was removed. We spent a lot of money having it somewhat removed and replaced because it just wasn't growing grass. So certainly it's worth our while buying more topsoil. In fact, right now, best topsoil I've seen in a long time is right up here at Baker and Jackson. All that screen piles, and some of that might be for sale, might be a great deal. It came from Old Farm Field, that's it. Anyway, that's for them to evaluate as far as, what it's, I know when I've done a subdivision at Old Farm Field was no irrigation, the grass still is wonderful in that project. The other thing is I'd like to comment that in the past, we've hired the fire department to water now. Now with their new contracts, they might be way more expensive than we can afford. But, because you can hire landscapers to come up with their tank trucks and water now, but before they had landscapers with tank trucks to do that, the fire department did that as part of their thing, and we paid them. too. Is that a possibility or no?
I have no idea. I sort of like the idea of, the fire department helping to water the plants, but I'd never heard of that before.
That's very time consuming, 27 beds. I mean,
But I'm
that's,
talking particularly about the trees.
yes.
The plant material is the first one. It is time consuming, but yeah. But then again, as part of their training, they would have their vehicles out running and, working as a team and all that. So that might be available, may not be, but just looking at history.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting idea. And there was something I don't want us to miss, and that was a point a moment ago when people were talking about maintenance, and Jay made sort of reminded the position that the DDA has taken in the past, and that is that the DDA will pay for sort of initial plantings and so on, but maintenance is sort of outside of the DDA's scope.
It's
in
by statute.
Actually, no. What I learned from the township attorney, because I assumed that was, because I'd heard it over and over again, I assumed that it was statutory, but it's not. It's just a policy that this body adopted at some point, or a norm that this body adopted. By statute, the DDAs are free to pay for maintenance of things that they create, or even things that they don't create, for that matter. I think in some ways, that is a good question to, we don't necessarily have to have it resolved today, but I think, in the long term, if we're gonna, as a body, invest a lot of money in improving the landscaping, it merits attention, it merits thinking, because the fund that the township has used to pay for maintenance is dwindling and doesn't have a sort of an obvious way to replenish. So to make sure that all of these investments in landscaping last, I think it makes sense for this group to think about some kind of a plan for maintenance, or at least an agreement between the township to share the cost.
Is the road commission responsible for any of that?
No.
I mean, they mow the sides of the roads, and they did, should do all that stuff, so.
I mean, we paid for the mowing and the maintenance when the boulevard was finished for a while, and then we were told we can't do that, so we were stopped from that.
I think at some
At
point,
the same
somebody
time,
said something.
we don't wanna be the maintenance department for the Scio Township.
Well, I know, I get it.
Because the maintenance department doesn't have funds here, doesn't mean, we can use this, so that's all. I agree that if it's a small project or something, we can definitely help out if it's in the DDA, but for maintenance, to take care of all the maintenance.
But no, just be for the islands.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the boulevard.
if the DDA wants to ensure that, the medians, the landscaping that we're investing in looks good in the long run, I think it's a question that has to be answered. I'm not saying we have to answer it today. I'm just saying it has to be answered, and I think it makes sense for this group to think about it. And there's no statutory prohibition on the DDA paying for maintenance costs.
Or special projects, especially.
So, well, is the lot on the corner of Stabler and Jackson listed, or is it listings have expired? I mean, is it with a realtor so we can sell that? It just sits there, and that maybe we want to look at the zoning, because even though we don't like drive-throughs, we have approved some drive-throughs, but it might be.
It's pretty small.
Yeah, but it might be a good drive-through for I know there's not a lot of dry cleaning and laundries anymore, but it's on the go home side as opposed to the come into town side. So for coffee, it's not good. But as far as the go home side,
You'd have to do one of those
That's what you
turnarounds
have
to
on
get
the
coffee
go-home
there.
But, well, the thing is that turnaround goes right into Stabler Road. So, I mean, they have the best situation they could have on Jackson Boulevard for
Well, Culver's doesn't seem to be hurt by being on the go home side of Jackson Road in terms of its drive-through business.
No,
So back to the landscaping though, were you
yeah, sorry.
going there?
Well, the reason I went there is that's what we've historically used as that
Oh, I see.
maintenance fund has been from the sale of the pieces that DDA had to do a total complete taking, and paid $1.2 million or something for that property, as I recall, and it's probably still worth, it might even still be worth it, who knows? Anyway, I'm sorry.
No,
I know I went
thank you.
sideways, sorry.
It's okay.
That's kind of where I was going with scraps, is there revenue sitting there that we
Exactly.
can
Go
use
into-
to benefit the entire community as opposed to just being unmown small scraps.
And what do other DDAs do, right, is, for their maintenance, is Dexter paying for theirs, or does does their city not pay for it?
I think some of them actually put in a special assessment district, haven't they, Will, and hit the commercial bubble for.
Ann Arbor has all
trash removal,
sorts
all kinds
of,
crazy stuff, so.
Why don't we, from today, I'm happy to start a summary of what was discussed. I've got, who's gonna water it? Is it native? Is there a replacement or warranty on these items? Oh, okay, just kidding.
They were clear.
Yeah. What's the soil improvement for any planting? And then what's the cost for watering or ongoing maintenance? Because who's paying to mow the islands now?
The township is out of a fund that Jay reminded me is, I think,
Yes,
funded largely from the sale of sort of, is it
solely from.
right of way or?
Well, no, it was when they were putting in the boulevard,
Uh-huh.
there were some businesses they had to do a total take.
Uh-huh.
Because they needed more of their front yard than the
And there
business
was, right.
could withstand. So then, when they did the total take, the road commission sold the remaining chunks of property after they took what they needed. And that money was then given to the township strictly for boulevard maintenance because they said they will be happy to mow it twice a year. There's only maybe about 7 years left, and then that fund will be extinguished.
And that's only mowing, that's not bark mulch, remulching, that's not trimming any of the trees, that's
No
not
watering.
replacing any dead trees, that's just mowing.
Twice a year is what the road commission will do, which was unacceptable to the township and the DDA.
So now the road commission is doing nothing.
Correct.
And the township is bumping up against a problem in that the number of mowings that have been going on in order to keep up is way in excess of the 2 per year. And I mean,
Probably
there's just a whole larger question of KBK's mowing of the medians. But the cost is significant. I don't know, 7 years, you really think it will last that long?
Last I looked, that was the maximum, but it really does depend on what the township has KBK do. If they have them doing a lot of trimming and weeding and that, it eats into that money much faster.
Then he needs to spray herbicide to keep the thistles out of the.
Yeah. Well, really, it should be a more sort of package of maintenance, more so than just mowing.
Right.
So
could we ask for a yearly, at least a quote? What's it gonna cost to mow at the predicted frequency plus?
Again, that's through them, they have a contract already with Scio.
Well, but
All that.
at least, can we at least understand that though, because then we would need to understand additional
Yeah.
cost.
I think it's
Plus
actually,
remulch.
this is really valuable because I think we're at a point where the township is gonna have to put it out for bid.
Yes.
And, having sort of a scope of work that is sort of thought through by the DDA. This is what we really would be ideal. That could be really helpful in terms of that RFP.
Our beds are gonna be smaller too, because our beds will
Yes.
now be 10 by 30, so there will actually be more grass in 24 to mow than there was this year.
So would the road commission's matching funds be of an appropriate use for matching on the maintenance?
I don't think you can, I don't think they're fungible that way.
It's a road. Maintenance of a.
Well,
It's not asphalt.
the money that's in that local road improvement fund is yeah, it's for specific kinds of uses. I don't think we can move it around like that.
No, I get it, it's not a local road.
Yeah, but I think the idea of the sale of those, especially those sort of scraps is of land that are still remaining from the boulevard project, original boulevard project. That revenue going into the fund for maintenance, or that makes sense. Because that was the original source of money for that account. So the fact that there's a bunch of those little scraps still out there, I mean, probably, I threw the idea out for the planning commission, maybe there's a way that these could be used in negotiation with developers, but the most likely purchasers of these little scraps are adjacent properties that would add them to their existing site.
If they were put for sale.
If they were for sale.
They haven't in the past, they just.
All right, back to the landscape. We had a proposal, we've been talking about this for at least 4 meetings. I'm a little disappointed we're not voting on it right now.
I think we should.
I think we should, subject to the question
Yeah.
that we have. I think we can vote
Yeah.
on it, and as long as.
Because again, we're time-wise, And, you know, a lot of these questions, like before the meeting, we can have these discussions, but I would read all our material ahead of time and be prepared to vote at these meetings. So again, we're not, you know, we're moving along, so.
We need to get on somebody's schedule. We need to get on KBK's schedule.
So when would
I
the
think this is
planting occur?
competitively priced.
Yeah, I do too.
They've talked to other people,
Yeah.
again, like,
Because you reached out.
I'm impressed with them. And I think
So
they
let's-
will take care of the
Let's vote on it, we
bats,
might have
but-
some minor tweaks,
Yeah.
right?
Well, can we vote on it and then can we,
Can we at least adjust
Right,
maybe
so
some
we
of the
leave,
bushes, to your point?
well, it's not adjusting the bush, any bushes you put in need maintenance. My whole thing comes back to somebody has to prune the stupid bushes and spray the herbicide and limb the trees
Got
out at some point between now and forever,
So
every other year.
we
So
can,
no matter what, that
we
has to
could
happen.
approve this in this proposal and authorize someone to make these tweaks, the committee.
Yeah.
Right? And then as far as the irrigation or whatever we have to do, we could pass that.
Add on to it.
at another meeting.
We did reach out to KBK during the drought, and he said the trees actually go dormant, so putting out bags for 24 hours really wouldn't help much, which was not, which was good information.
In the spring.
Yeah, no, this
So
was.
we're about to do that. Maintenance department, we have bags here stored somewhere.
It's a good thing it took so long.
All
right.
We would have wasted a lot of
And we
money.
looked at, we've got three options, right? 1, 3, and 4.
Yep.
Sounds like, Linda, you don't like number 1?
It's not that I don't like it, I just want
It
to.
just says maintenance.
I just want to make sure we have a maintenance plan. Anything we do is going to
Right.
fail.
So it sounds, if
So we need to
I,
ask for a quote.
if I read the
That would be-
group correctly, it sounds like there's a desire to move forward with this proposal. Just to look for clarification about some of these questions within the proposal, or to bring back a separate quote from the same folks for some of these things that we've talked about that aren't included in the proposal.
The first one's the improving the soil condition to make sure it's more successful.
You can put that into the contract. You can say the holes they dig for the plants shall have X amount
Yep.
of good stuff in them.
I think on top of that, though, we'd have to come back with a quote for the maintenance.
So
And the
That's a
township
separate
wants one
question.
anyway,
Right.
because we're adding 13 beds that were planted that are gonna become grass. So there's gonna be a lot more grass for
So-
next season.
So we're gonna pick 1 or 2 or all 3 of these proposed.
The plan was to plant all 3, just as some cadence, so you're not driving past the same bed over
That's
and over
good.
again.
So all 3, and yeah.
But maybe without the Wegelia, is that what you're?
No, I don't have an argument with it. It has to be maintained. You can't just leave it for 20 years.
Is it possible for us to move forward? And I agree with you, Bob, that let's vote on something, but I think that there are enough questions with this specific proposal that we're not planning on planting until the fall anyway.
Right.
Let's move forward with them and then continue to refine what the actual scope is. And I think that it might make some sense to remove some of the additional plantings that are just gonna be maintenance. And maybe you add a 3rd tree instead of the bushes. So you've got 3 trees instead of the bushes, but moving forward with tweaks to be made to the scope and with a supplemental bid for the annual maintenance. Maybe it makes sense for us to do, to contract for 1 or 2 years of additional maintenance, because the big thing that they say is no warranty on plant material due to no irrigation. Maybe we're penny wise and pound foolish by not getting the irrigation for 1 or 2 years. So pay for the year, we can come back and talk about it, but pay for 1 or 2 of irrigation so that the trees and the plants can get it established. But I don't think that stops any of those further questions. I don't think it stops us from saying, yes, the cost is right. No, the scope isn't quite refined. Let's refine it with the committee.
All right, so
I move that we move forward with the landscaping on Jackson Boulevard with the referencing the proposal from KBK Landscaping at $105,000 with the details to be worked out.
second. And then discussion, so again, we're talking about half the boulevard from which end? From Wagner down to Z, half. And then next year we'll look at the other half, so, all right? So we got a
That's good.
second.
I didn't recognize that it's half this in the first year, because then
40
you can sort of
days.
like learn from the first year, and that will inform the second year half.
All right, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
We'll get people excited about it.
Wait a second, actually, this is an expenditure, so we have to have.
Oh, yeah, we have to do a voice vote.
Voice vote. Jay,
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Sandy.
Yes.
Linda.
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes.
Bob, yes.
Say Jeff.
Yes, and you
And
said
Jeff?
Jeff.
Jeff, oh, he's sitting down there just slouches. Jeff.
It won't go up.
Yeah, sir, thank
You
you.
got the
Yes.
man share.
It's like escape
Motion passes,
responsibility.
good, good, moving forward, good. And then an update on the budget, cash flow, I forwarded that statement that Sandy put together for us, just to show you future revenues, potential future revenues going forward, to see if anybody had any questions, and then you can match it with our expenses. Again, most of the money goes to the bond payment that has about 8 years left, maybe. Something that's less than 10.
I think fiscal year 29 comes to mind.
All right, so. But just to show everybody what's coming in. And again, you know, I'm gonna have this conversation with the manager that if we didn't have a DDA, Scio would lose this money. It wouldn't come in. It would go back to these entities. So some people want to close down the DDA, which they have the right to say that. But Scio would lose the revenue. So I just, you know, and again, the DDA put together the boulevard that we all enjoy. So it's just amazing, you know, the perspective on that, not having a DDA. Questions?
We had a discussion several meetings ago about getting consultants in to help us push the DDA continuation discussion,
Yes.
and I was not here for the May 8th meeting. Was it discussed?
It wasn't, I don't know if we brought it up.
It was maybe briefly.
Yeah, briefly, but you know, I, if we had time, I do think we need a consultant for that. And I've been told numerous times now that we probably need our own legal advice because there's differences with the Scio, whether we're a separate entity, whether we even have our own EIN number, which we don't know. We're still waiting for the IRS to mail us back. You call them and email, it just doesn't work. So I sent a letter 3 months ago. I don't know where it is, but so, you know, as far as consultants, I think we need one to talk about extending the DDA and why it's important to extend the DDA before we're done is we can, if we needed to, we can issue bonds. And that's really the only reason. If we needed a bond next year for some road project, we can't issue it because our time frame is too short. So we have to extend the DDA to have the ability to issue bonds for 10, 20 years. So, and there'll be a public meetings. We'll do it, you know, proper protocol.
Can we
But
put
that's a good
something on
question.
the agenda for the next meeting?
Yes.
To try and actively find a consultant.
Yes.
Great.
We'll do some digging. Maybe our legal counsel on our board can help us find somebody that specializes in DDAs. And again, I think Scio's got great representation. I just think we need her. We're to that point, just to make sure what we can and can't do, right? Just make the maintenance is a good question. I think we can do it. I don't want to be the maintenance department, but I think we can help with maintenance. Jay doesn't think so we'll figure that out.
I think what Jay said earlier is he was operating under the assumption that there was a statutory restriction and it sort of came as a surprise to me in a conversation with the township attorney that, no, that's not the case.
Yep. So.
And I know I missed it, I apologize, I drank too much water. In the fall, if we're working on like road decisions and whatnot, can we also look to clarify what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do, what we can decide to do? Just
What money we can actually spend,
make,
what money
just
isn't
so
ours.
we can make decisions a lot easier, be transparent with the community.
Yeah.
And it might be a hard no, and that's fine, but at least we all are on the same page.
Yeah. Good question. There's no bills to pay. Any other questions regarding?
I have one thing to share.
Yes.
I had reached out to Ann Jameson about the grant in the brownfield. And she says please convey the following information. The Eagle grant has been approved for a 1-year extension to finalize the design and installation of the vapor mitigation system and remediation at the project site. The environmental teams are meeting today with Eagle to discuss the vapor mitigation design and installation, and I will provide an update to the DDA/township following this meeting on the timeline.
And again, you see that sometimes in Sandy's reports, the money from the state of Michigan goes in and goes out. So it's not really revenue to us, we're just a pass through on the local project. And it's worked great. I think that environmental firm's been excellent to deal with.
Yeah.
So we need more projects like that.
Well, we could charge for
Yeah.
the time that we spend.
Yeah.
Are we
I think we were doing that.
In the
We were-
beginning, there was a
Yeah, we were
small
charging a little
charge, but
bit.
we haven't done that since, so if there's a consensus of what that should be, then we can have, let Jake
I
and
do
know.
forward some of those on to some contractors just to review, because the language is a little bit different, so maybe they can charge a little fee to.
Was there a budget that had a line item for us?
Yes.
So we should build up to the
Yeah.
budget
Yeah.
amount.
I'll
That's
find,
pretty
I'll
good.
find that amount.
I think we were billing, we should.
Yeah.
Especially since there is some time being spent on it, so.
Anything else? Anybody want to add anything? Board members?
For next meeting, I did, Gus, before I left, had this sign
Oh, yeah.
that we can vote on at a later time. But it was $3,950 per sign to redo the Scio Township.
We put them at both ends?
I don't know anything more about it, but he had to go to that.
There was gonna be
So-
one, I recall from one of the prior meetings we had, there'll definitely be one down on the Wagner end. I don't know where it would go down at this, I mean, we could put it in a lot of different places down this end, but way at the end of the boulevard, like almost out by Neon Drive, but there's. Or you could put it closer to my property and Woodview property, put in the middle there, but they're about to redo that next year again.
Woodview Commons, as part of their site plan that's approved, includes a welcome to Scio sign. So if we wanted to give them some guidance so that the signs all look
Match.
similar,
Good.
this would be a good time to do it before they actually spend money on it.
Where are they putting their sign?
I think on their property.
Do you wanna
How do
borrow
we
this
give them
and
that
scan it for
Well, if this is what, and in some ways, this is an early recommendation stage that we haven't even voted to approve it here, to recommend it. And I'm guessing that it's the kind of thing the Board of Trustees would also approve.
At least you can give them an idea of what.
Well,
we're looking at.
uniformity is a good thing.
Yes. Yeah, well, what you've got on the wall behind us here is kind of the old logo. And what Gus has in his proposal is the new approved logo, so that's at least more up to date, but I don't know, I've learned the hard way over my career that organizations get into protracted arguments about logos.
Was there a branding standard for Scio with colors and fonts?
I
Well,
think
Jeff
there
suggested-
are,
We find out what it is.
yeah. I think there is a sort of
Follow that, make it
color
very easy.
palette, that's supposed to be used.
I pulled, there is a logo on the website right now that I pull. Which is
With like
similar,
a page
it's
with stuff.
similar in colors to this. This is just stylized differently.
They use the same color, there's gotta be a color number.
Yeah.
Pantone,
Yeah.
number.
Who would
Right.
know?
The sign company.
Well, I think touch base with Mary Gillis, the deputy clerk, because she works with the newsletter, and so they're putting the logo into that all the time. And I'm guessing that the desktop publishing person that she works with, the graphic designer, would have all of that information at their fingertips.
They probably designed it and has it all. And
Yes.
Use specifications that should be published.
But it was a prior board, not something that I was ever involved in. I know that people on the prior board were very particular about it. So I'm guessing that that's where it was approved.
Maybe even Jim Murdy knows something about it.
Well, you could track him down. He's-
Let's ask Mary since she's an employee now.
Yeah,
You'd have to run after him on the golf course, I
I
think.
can answer about that.
Well, just one person, who's gonna ask?
I'll do
Ryan's
it.
gonna answer.
Okay, Ryan, you got the signs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you're also next door neighbors with View Commons, so maybe stop, don't put up a sign.
They took down all the those directional signs. I drove by my site this morning and all that got taken down sometime over the last few days.
Yeah. The West Scio business sign.
Yeah, we couldn't move to my property. We tried working something out, it just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Sorry, they knew it was coming down. Yeah, but maybe we need some of their topsoil, because that end up there is the worst.
It's a
Trucks.
Mackenzie, it's a Mackenzie site? Woodview Commons is Mackenzie?
Yes, they're doing all the
I can call Mackenzie and find out about the topsoil.
Well, they're gonna have to dig up that particular boulevard.
Chargers.
Well, the road commission required them to reconfigure where the turnarounds are right in front of their site, which is something that came to us, I think, almost a year and a half ago.
I think
That's
they're
phase
gonna,
two,
right? They're gonna
so.
change that.
Pardon?
There's gonna be a change, right? No?
next year is allegedly, I was told.
Do you need a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry,
Yes,
what's
thank
that?
you. Thanks for your time. 1:44.
Yes.
Thank you.
Julian said Chris called me at a chance. She.
All right, I'll send a note out when I get home.
About
Okay. And then
I can't
You wanna be there?
tomorrow.
That's okay.